Beneath the surface of familiar religious rituals and comfortable tradition lies a revelation so jarring, so seismic, it threatens to shake the very foundation of what millions believe. A truth long buried beneath layers of translation, conquest, and cultural reinvention. Jesus is not the name of the man who walked the earth, healed the sick, and moved crowds with words that stirred the soul. That name, revered, repeated, and etched into the hearts of followers worldwide, is a fabrication, a result of historical sleight of hand.
Jesus!
If one were to travel back in time and stand on the dusty roads of ancient Palestine, calling out for Jesus, no one would turn. Not the disciples, not the followers, not even the man himself.
Jesus!
That name did not exist. His true name, Isa to the Arabs, Esau to the Hebrews, Yeshua in the language he spoke, Aramaic. That name carried his identity, his culture, his essence. But that identity was quietly rewritten, reshaped across centuries of empire and influence. The distortion began as Christianity spread across the Roman Empire. As the message moved westward, so did the language. Yeshua became Iesus in Greek. Then, in the mouth of the Latin-speaking world, Iesus became Jesus. It was a deliberate rebranding as the early church aligned itself with the power structures of Rome. The rugged Semitic Yeshua, brown-skinned, Hebrew-speaking and unmistakably Jewish, was gradually transformed into a name that fit better alongside Brutus or Augustus. These were names of emperors, conquerors, gods of state. Yeshua sounded too foreign, too Eastern, too real. And so, to match the imperial Polish of the West, his name was smoothed, trimmed, and Latinized. But the erasure didn't stop with his name. Even his title, Christ, wasn't his. It never left his lips. It never echoed from the mouths of his disciples. It was never inscribed by those who knew him. The word Christos was the Greek approximation of the Hebrew Messiah, the Anointed One. But in Greek hands, Messiah was repackaged into Christos and eventually shortened to just Christ. And just like that, a title loaded with Hebrew prophecy and meaning was hollowed out, turned into a foreign label that Yeshua himself would not have recognized. And what of his closest companions? Even their identities weren't spared. Consider Peter, or rather don't, because Peter wasn't his name. His name was Simon, a rugged man, passionate, stubborn, a fighter by nature, the kind who wouldn't back down from a challenge. The type you'd find in the highlands of Ireland, fists ready, or among the proud warriors of the Pashtun tribes. That was Simon. And when Yeshua looked upon him, he saw a foundation. "On this rock," he said, "I will build my church." That phrase, "this rock," was said in Hebrew. But then came the translation, Hebrew to Greek, Petros, a word that meant rock, solid, unmoving, the kind of foundation upon which kingdoms dream to build. It wasn't just a name, it was a declaration. And from Petros emerged the name Peter. Yet Simon never heard that name in his life. He never responded to it. He never introduced himself with it. Imagine that, a towering figure in Christian history, forever remembered by a name that meant nothing to him. And it gets deeper. Even the name of God himself was subjected to the same process. Jehova, a name millions hold sacred, was not revealed in ancient scripture. It's a synthetic construction, a linguistic Frankenstein, born of confusion between the Hebrew YHWH, the tetragrammaton, and the vowels of Adonai. And yet, Jehovah is preached, chanted and printed on pulpits and pamphlets as if it had descended from the heavens. Where did Jehovah come from? It's a question that, once asked, cannot be unasked. And once the door is open, it's impossible to ignore the storm on the other side. What we're witnessing is not just a few mispronunciations. It's a centuries-long transformation, a slow-motion erasure. One that exchanged Yeshua for Jesus, Messiah for Christ, Simon for Peter, and YHWH for Jehovah. And in the process, the original man, the prophet, the rebel, the teacher, was buried beneath layers of language and empire. And here's the chilling twist. The more these names were twisted, the more they began to resemble names from entirely different traditions. Names like Zeus, the king of Greek gods. When said aloud in some dialects, Iesous eerily echoes Zeus. Coincidence? Or a subtle blending of divine figures, where the lines between the God of Israel and the gods of Olympus began to blur? So the question hangs, heavy in the air. When he returns, will he even recognize the name we call him by? Will the one known as Yeshua, the man who wept, who prayed, who stood against oppression, answer to Jesus? Or will he pause, confused by the centuries of distortion, by the empires that claim to speak in his name while silencing his truth? This is not merely a linguistic curiosity. It is a revelation of how power rewrites history, how the truth of a man's life can be lost, renamed, rebranded, until what remains is an image, a statue, a name that no longer belongs to the man it once represented. And so we're left not with clarity, but with a question. If the name has changed, what else has been altered?